The wind howled across the frozen planet like a monster's scream. Lisa Carter pulled her armored legs through the deep snow, each step harder than the last. The metal suit around her body hummed quietly as it fought to keep her warm. Outside, the temperature was cold enough to kill a person in minutes. 3 days had passed since the battle went wrong. 3 days since her team got split up during the retreat. 3 days since she had seen another human face. Lisa's helmet display showed the number she didn't want to see. 67 hours of power left, food for maybe 4 more days, and the pickup zone was still 2 days away if she could walk without stopping. The planet Kepler 442b looked like a frozen hell. Ice covered everything as far as she could see. The 2 suns in the sky gave no warmth, just pale light that made the snow sparkle like broken glass. This place had been beautiful once before the war came. Before humans and Zephyrians started killing each other over who owned what. Lisa stopped at the top of a hill and looked down into the valley below. Her suit's computer told her this used to be a Zephyrian town. She could see the strange curved buildings that the aliens liked to build. Most of them were broken now, with holes blown through their walls. Dark smoke stains marked where explosions had happened. She almost turned away, almost kept walking toward the pickup zone. But something caught her eye in the snow between the buildings. Small shapes that didn't belong. Her helmet zoomed in automatically, and Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. They were babies, alien babies, but babies all the same. About 12 of them scattered across the abandoned town. They had fur the color of silver and blue and 4 little legs each. They looked like a cross between a cat and a fox, but smaller, much smaller. Each one was no bigger than Lisa's hand. The computer in her helmet ran a quick scan. The little creatures were alive, but barely. Their body heat was almost gone. They moved slowly in the snow, trying to find shelter that wasn't there. One of them looked up at Lisa from where it lay, too weak to even lift its head properly. Lisa's training told her to keep moving. These were enemy aliens. The Zephyrians had been fighting humans for 2 years now. They had killed her friends. They would kill her if they found her. She should leave these babies to die and focus on getting home alive. But Lisa couldn't move. She stood there watching the little creatures struggle in the snow, and all she could think about was her brother Jake. Jake had been 8 when the accident happened. Lisa remembered holding him in the hospital, feeling how small and cold he had gotten. She remembered how helpless she felt, knowing she couldn't save him. These weren't human babies, but they were someone's babies. Somewhere out there, alien parents were probably crying for these little ones. They had been forced to leave them behind when the fighting got too close, just like human parents would have to do. One of the cubs made a tiny sound like a kitten crying. It was trying to crawl toward the others, but it was too weak. Lisa watched it collapse in the snow, its small body shaking from the cold. That decided it. Lisa moved down the hill toward the town. Her heavy boots crunched through the snow as she walked between the broken buildings. The cubs heard her coming. Those that could still move tried to crawl away, but they were too weak to go far. "It's okay," Lisa said quietly, even though she knew they couldn't understand her. "I'm not going to hurt you." She knelt down next to the closest cub. It was a little female with white patches on her silver fur. The cub looked up at Lisa with big eyes that held too much fear for something so young. Lisa reached out slowly with her armored hand. The cub didn't try to bite or scratch. It just lay there, too tired to be afraid anymore. Lisa's suit had emergency compartments in the chest area. They were meant to carry medical supplies or important equipment. She opened them up and started to reconfigure the space. Her suit's computer, which she called Helen, immediately started complaining. "Sergeant Carter, this modification will reduce suit efficiency by 32%, Helen said in her calm electronic voice. "Your survival probability will drop significantly." "I know," Lisa said as she adjusted the heating elements inside the compartments. "Sometimes the math doesn't matter." She gathered up the cubs one by one. They were so light she could barely feel their weight, even through the thick gloves of her suit. Each one was barely alive, their small bodies cold as ice. Lisa placed them carefully in the warm compartments she had created, making sure they had enough space to breathe and move. As the heat from her suit started to warm them up, the cubs began to move more. They made small sounds and pressed against each other for comfort. Lisa could feel their tiny heartbeats through the suit's sensors, fast and desperate but getting stronger. The last cub she picked up was the one that had tried to crawl toward the others. It was a little male with bright blue fur and a white stripe down his nose. When Lisa lifted him, he made a small chirping sound and looked right at her. For a moment, their eyes met through her helmet's faceplate. "You're a brave little guy," Lisa said softly. "I'll call you Scout." With all 12 cubs safely tucked inside her armor, Lisa stood up and looked around the dead town one more time. Helen updated her survival calculations constantly, the numbers getting worse every few seconds. But Lisa didn't care about the numbers anymore. She started walking toward the pickup zone, moving slower now because of the extra weight and the need to be careful with her small passengers. The cubs were quiet at first, but as they warmed up, they started to move around. Lisa could feel them shifting inside her armor, exploring their new warm space. The wind picked up again, driving snow into Lisa's helmet and making it hard to see. But she kept walking step by step through the frozen wasteland. She had made her choice. These babies would not die alone in the cold, not while she could do something about it. Inside her armor, the cubs pressed against each other and against the warm metal that surrounded them. They didn't understand what had happened to them, but they knew they were safe now. The big creature that had found them smelled different from their parents, but her heartbeat was steady and her warmth was real. Lisa walked on through the snow, carrying 12 small lives toward an uncertain future. Behind her, the abandoned town disappeared into the storm. Ahead of her lay 2 days of hard travel and dangers she couldn't predict. But for the first time since her team had been scattered, Lisa felt like she had a real reason to survive. The first night was the hardest. Lisa found shelter in a cave that her suit's scanner said was safe. No dangerous gases, no unstable rocks that might fall, just a deep hole in the mountainside that would keep the wind out. She sat with her back against the stone wall and listened to the cubs moving around inside her armor. They were getting stronger. That was good. But they were also getting more active, and that made walking difficult. Every few steps, one of them would shift position and throw off her balance. Her armor's computer kept adjusting to compensate, but it used extra power each time. Helen ran the numbers constantly. Food would last 3 more days if Lisa was careful. Power would last 59 hours at current usage. The pickup zone was still 36 hours of walking away, assuming no delays. "The probability of mission success continues to decline," Helen reported in her neutral voice. "Current survival estimate is 19%. "Stop telling me the odds," Lisa said. She could feel Scout moving around near her left shoulder. The little cub seemed more curious than the others. While his siblings mostly slept or stayed huddled together, Scout explored every corner of his new home. Lisa closed her eyes and tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift off, one of the cubs would make a small sound or move in a way that reminded her they were there. She found herself thinking about Jake again, about all the times she had babysit him when their parents were working late. Jake had been afraid of thunderstorms. Lisa used to sit with him during bad weather, telling him stories until the lightning stopped. She wondered if the cubs were afraid too. They had lost their parents and their home. Now they were trapped inside a metal suit with a strange creature they had never seen before. "It's okay," Lisa whispered to them. "I've got you. You're safe now." The cubs couldn't understand her words, but they seemed to respond to her voice. The restless movements inside her armor settled down. Soon Lisa could hear the soft sounds of sleeping babies, tiny heartbeats and gentle breathing that the suit's sensors picked up and translated into sounds she could hear. Lisa finally fell asleep to that rhythm. For a few hours, she dreamed of green fields and warm sunshine. In her dream, the cubs were playing in tall grass while their parents watched from nearby. Everyone was safe and happy and warm. She woke up when Helen's alarm chimed softly in her helmet. Dawn was coming to the frozen planet, though the light would be cold and pale. Lisa stretched carefully, making sure not to disturb the cubs, and checked her suit's status. Power down to 51 hours. Food for 2.5 days. The cubs had been warm all night, which meant they were using more energy than Helen had calculated. But they were alive and healthy, and that was what mattered. Lisa stood up and started walking again. The landscape looked the same in every direction. Snow and ice and rocks with mountains in the distance that never seemed to get any closer. Her boots crunched through the frozen ground with each step. The sound echoed off the empty hills around her. After 2 hours of walking, Scout started making noise. Not distress sounds like the night before, but curious chirping that seemed almost like questions. Lisa found herself talking back to him. "That's the wind you hear," she said when a strong gust howled across the valley. "It's just air moving fast." Nothing to be scared of. When Scout chirped again, Lisa laughed. Yes, it is cold out here. That's why you're all staying inside where it's warm. The other cubs began to join the conversation. Each one had a different voice. Patches, the little female with white markings, made soft cooing sounds. Another cub that Lisa started calling Sleepy barely made any noise at all, just small sighs that meant he was comfortable. Rascal, who seemed determined to explore every inch of the armor's interior, made quick chattering sounds when he found something interesting. As the day went on, Lisa found herself telling the cubs about Earth, about blue skies and green trees and rain that didn't freeze before it hit the ground. She told them about her family's farm in Ohio, where her nephew played with a big golden dog named Murphy. Murphy would like you guys, Lisa said as she climbed over a pile of fallen rocks. He's good with little animals. He helped raise 3 litters of kittens that my mom found in the barn. The cubs listened to her voice, and Lisa could swear they were trying to understand. When she told funny stories, Scout would chirp more excitedly. When she talked about sad things like Jake's accident, the cubs would get very quiet, as if they knew something was wrong. By midday, Lisa had to stop and rest. The extra weight and the need to move carefully were wearing her out faster than normal. She sat on a boulder and shared one of her energy bars with the cubs. They were too young to eat solid food, but they seemed interested in the smell. That's when she heard the aircraft. The sound was faint at first, just a hum that could have been wind, but Lisa's trained ears recognized it immediately. Zephyrian patrol ships flying a search pattern overhead, looking for survivors from the battle 3 days ago. Looking for her. Lisa froze, not even breathing. Her armor's stealth systems were offline to save power, which meant she was completely visible if the ships got close enough. She was sitting on top of a boulder in the middle of an empty valley with nowhere to hide. The sound got louder. Through her helmet speakers, Lisa could hear the distinctive whine of Zephyrian engines. 2 ships, maybe 3, flying low and slow. Searching carefully, Scout chose that exact moment to let out a loud, excited chirp. Lisa's blood went cold. The cubs had never heard aircraft before. To Scout, it was probably just another interesting new sound. But to the Zephyrian pilots overhead, it was a sound they would recognize instantly. The sound of their own young. Shh, Lisa whispered desperately. Please be quiet, please, but Scout was excited now. He chirped again, louder this time. The other cubs started responding, thinking it was a new game. Soon half of them were making noise. The aircraft sounds changed direction. They were coming closer. Lisa closed her eyes and did the only thing she could think of. She started humming. It was an old song her mother used to sing when Lisa was small, a lullaby about sleeping safely while the world went on outside. She hummed it quietly at first, then louder as the cubs continued to make noise. Something amazing happened. The cubs heard her humming, and one by one they fell silent. Not scared silent, but peaceful silent, as if the melody was telling them that everything was okay, that their strange new mother was taking care of them. The aircraft passed overhead without stopping. The pilots heard nothing but wind and empty mountains. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the sound faded away toward the horizon. Lisa sat on the boulder for a long time after that, shaking from fear and relief. The cubs had settled down inside her armor, making small, contented sounds. Scout pressed against her ribs as if trying to get closer to the source of the humming. Good babies, Lisa whispered. You're all such good babies. She stood up and started walking again. The pickup zone was still more than a day away, and she had just learned that Zephyrian patrols were actively searching the area. But somehow Lisa felt more hopeful than she had since the mission started. She wasn't alone anymore. She had 12 small lives depending on her, and that gave her a strength she hadn't known she possessed. As she walked through the snow, Lisa kept humming the old lullaby. The cubs listened to every note, learning the rhythm of safety and love. The second day brought new challenges. Lisa woke up in another cave, this one smaller and less comfortable than the first. Her body ached from sleeping on hard stone, and her suit's power level had dropped to 38 hours. The cubs were more active now, which meant they were healthier, but it also meant they needed more attention. Scout had become the leader of the group. Lisa could feel him moving around inside her armor, checking on the other cubs and making soft sounds that seemed to calm them down. Patches stayed close to Scout, like a little sister following her big brother. Sleepy had found the warmest spot near Lisa's heart and claimed it as his own territory. Rascal was the troublemaker, He had discovered that he could squeeze through the small gaps between armor plates and explore parts of the suit that were never meant to hold passengers. Twice during the night, Lisa had felt him tickling her ribs as he wandered around behind the main compartment. "You're going to get yourself stuck," Lisa told him as she felt him moving again. "And then we'll both be in trouble." The cubs were learning to recognize her voice. When Lisa spoke, they would get quiet and listen. When she was silent for too long, Scout would chirp as if asking her to say something. It was like having a conversation with very small, very alien children. Lisa started walking as soon as there was enough light to see. The landscape was changing as she got closer to the pickup zone. The mountains were taller here, and there were more caves and rock formations that could hide dangerous animals. Lisa's suit scanned constantly for threats, but so far they had been lucky. Around midday, Lisa's food situation became critical. She had been sharing her rations with the cubs, even though they couldn't eat much. But now she was down to her last energy bar and half a bottle of water. If the pickup was delayed or if she couldn't find the exact location, she would be in serious trouble. That's when Scout started making excited noises again. "What is it, little guy?" Lisa asked. She could feel him pressing against the armor near her shoulder, as if trying to point at something outside. Then she saw them, fresh tracks in the snow, large paw prints that her suit's computer identified as belonging to ice wolves, the planet's main predator. The tracks were only a few hours old, which meant the pack was somewhere nearby. Ice wolves were dangerous even for a fully armed soldier in power armor. They hunted in groups and were smart enough to set traps. Lisa's suit had weapons, but using them would drain her power even faster. And if she got into a fight, she might not be able to protect the cubs. Lisa changed direction, trying to circle around the area where the tracks were thickest. But as she walked, she noticed more signs of wolves. Scratch marks on trees, scent markers that her suit detected. This was their territory, and she was walking right through the middle of it. The attack came without warning. Lisa's rear sensors screamed an alert just as something heavy slammed into her back. She stumbled forward, fighting to keep her balance as claws scraped across her armor. The impact sent the cubs tumbling around inside her suit, and she could hear them making frightened sounds. Lisa spun around and saw the ice wolf that had attacked her. It was huge, bigger than any wolf on Earth, with pale blue fur and teeth like knives. Its breath came out in white puffs as it circled her, looking for another opening. Behind it, Lisa could see 3 more wolves emerging from behind rocks and ice formations. They had been watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. Now they had her surrounded. The lead wolf lunged again. This time Lisa was ready. Her suit's defensive systems activated automatically, sending an electric shock through the armor's surface. The wolf yelped and jumped back, but it wasn't seriously hurt. It was just angry now. Lisa reached for her weapon, then stopped. If she used the plasma rifle, it would drain 15% of her remaining power. If she had to fight all 4 wolves, she might not have enough energy left to reach the pickup zone. But if she didn't fight, the wolves would eventually find a way through her armor. That's when she heard Scout chirping urgently inside her suit. At first, Lisa thought he was just scared by the fighting, but then she realized he was making a specific pattern of sounds. Short chirps followed by longer ones, repeated over and over. It sounded almost like he was trying to communicate with something. The lead wolf stopped circling and tilted its head, listening. Its ears perked up, and Lisa could see confusion in its yellow eyes. The other wolves looked puzzled too. They had never heard sounds like that before. Scout kept chirping, and now Patches and some of the other cubs joined in. They were making the same pattern of sounds over and over. Lisa had no idea what it meant, but the wolves were definitely reacting to it. Slowly, carefully, the lead wolf approached Lisa's armor. Instead of attacking, it sniffed at the chest section where the cubs were hidden. Its tail, which had been stiff with aggression, started to wag slightly. Lisa held perfectly still. She had seen this behavior before on Earth. Adult animals recognizing the sounds of babies. The wolves weren't hearing enemy aliens. They were hearing young creatures calling for help. The lead wolf made a soft whining sound and backed away. It barked once at the other wolves, and the whole pack melted back into the rocks as quickly as they had appeared. Within minutes, Lisa was alone again in the snowy valley. "Well, I'll be damned," Lisa said quietly. "You guys just saved our lives." Scout chirped proudly as if he knew exactly what he had done. The other cubs were calming down now, making comfortable sounds as they settled back into their warm spots. Lisa shook her head in amazement and started walking again. The rest of the day passed without incident. Lisa told the cubs about Earth animals, about how wolves there lived in families and took care of their young. She told them about dogs and cats and horses, and how humans had learned to live alongside them. The cubs listened to every word, chirping occasionally as if asking questions. As the sun set on the second day, Lisa could see lights in the distance. The pickup zone was close now, maybe just a few more hours of walking. But her suit's power was down to 18 hours and she was exhausted. Every step was an effort now. That night, Lisa found shelter in a small ice cave. As she settled down to rest, she felt the cubs moving around inside her armor. They were restless, making soft sounds that seemed different from before. Almost sad, it took Lisa a moment to realize what was happening. The cubs could sense that their journey was almost over. Somehow they knew that changes were coming, and like all children facing the unknown, they were scared. "It's going to be okay," Lisa told them. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I promise you'll be safe. I won't let anyone hurt you." Scout pressed against her ribs, and Lisa could swear she felt him trembling, not from cold but from emotion. She reached up and touched the armor over her heart, wishing she could hold him properly. "I know you don't understand most of what I'm saying," Lisa said softly, "but I want you to know that you saved me too. Before I found you, I was just trying to survive. Now I have something worth surviving for." The cubs made small sounds in response, and gradually they settled down to sleep. But Lisa stayed awake for a long time, staring up at the stars through the cave entrance. Tomorrow would bring the pickup zone and hopefully rescue, but it would also mean making difficult decisions about 12 small lives that had become more important to her than her own. Outside the cave, the wind howled across the frozen landscape, but inside Lisa's armor, 12 alien babies slept peacefully, warm and safe and loved. For tonight, that was enough. The third morning started badly. Lisa woke up to Helen's urgent warnings flashing across her helmet display. Power at 12 hours remaining. Multiple system failures detected. Life support operating at minimum levels. The constant drain of keeping 12 cubs warm had pushed her armor beyond its limits. Lisa struggled to her feet, feeling every ache in her body. She hadn't eaten in 18 hours, and the last of her water was gone. The cubs sensed her distress and made worried sounds inside her armor. Scout pressed against her ribs as if trying to comfort her. "I'm okay," Lisa lied, knowing they could probably hear the weakness in her voice. "We're almost there. Just a little further." The pickup zone was visible now, a flat area between two hills where her rescue ship could land safely. Lisa could see the emergency beacon she was supposed to activate, a tall metal pole with a bright orange flag, but the zone looked empty. No ship, no rescue team, no sign that anyone was coming for her. Lisa activated her emergency communicator, using precious power to send a distress signal. Static filled her helmet speakers. She tried again, adjusting frequencies and boosting the signal strength. Still nothing but empty noise. The terrible truth hit her like a physical blow. The rescue ship wasn't coming. Either it had been shot down, or the military had written her off as dead, or something had gone wrong with the extraction plan. She was truly alone on this frozen planet with no way to get home. Lisa sat down heavily on a snow-covered rock and stared at the empty pickup zone. Her armor had maybe 10 hours of power left, not enough to reach any other human outpost. Her food was gone, her water was gone, and the temperature was dropping as another storm moved in from the north. For the first time since finding the cubs, Lisa felt like giving up. She had tried so hard to save them, but now it looked like they would all die together in the snow. The cubs deserved better than that. They deserved to see their families again. That's when she heard the engines. 3 Zephyrian aircraft appeared over the hills, flying low and fast. Lisa's heart sank even further. Getting captured by enemy forces was bad enough. But what would they do when they found her carrying their young? Would they think she had kidnapped the cubs? Would they kill her before she could explain? Lisa stood up slowly, raising her hands to show she wasn't going to fight. The aircraft circled her position like predators, their weapons trained on her armor. Then they landed in the pickup zone, kicking up clouds of snow and ice. 6 Zephyrian soldiers emerged from the ships. They were tall and graceful, with 4 arms each and crystalline skin that reflected the pale sunlight. Their weapons were unlike anything humans made, looking more like living creatures than machines. The soldiers spread out in a perfect circle around Lisa, cutting off any chance of escape. The leader stepped forward. Lisa could see intricate scars carved into his skull, marking him as someone important. His 4 eyes studied her armor with obvious confusion. What was a lone human doing so far from any battlefield? Why wasn't she fighting or trying to run? The leader barked commands in the musical Zephyrian language. Lisa understood enough to know he was demanding her surrender. She nodded and started to kneel down, moving very slowly to avoid triggering an attack. That's when Scout decided to speak up. The little cub let out a loud, clear chirp that echoed across the pickup zone. The effect on the Zephyrian soldiers was immediate and dramatic. Their weapons dropped slightly, and their aggressive postures shifted to shock and confusion. The leader's 4 eyes went wide with disbelief. Scout chirped again, and this time Patches joined him. Then Rascal and Sleepy and all the others, 12 young voices calling out in perfect Zephyrian, using sounds that meant safety and family and home. The leader stumbled backward as if he had been shot. He said something in his own language, a single word that sounded like a prayer. The other soldiers lowered their weapons completely, staring at Lisa's armor with wonder and growing understanding. Lisa took a deep breath and activated her suit's external speakers. Very carefully, she began to open the chest compartments where the cubs were hidden. The metal plates slid apart with soft clicks, revealing the warm interior spaces she had created. 12 small furry bodies tumbled out into the snow, chirping and calling excitedly. They were healthy and strong, their silver and blue fur shining in the sunlight. The cubs looked around at the familiar faces surrounding them, then raced toward the soldiers with joyful cries. The leader dropped to his knees as 2 cubs, Scout and Patches, threw themselves at him. His scarred face crumpled with emotion as he gathered them close, tears streaming down his crystalline cheeks. His 4 arms wrapped around the little ones as if he would never let them go again. The other soldiers were having similar reunions. Each one seemed to recognize specific cubs, calling them by names Lisa couldn't pronounce. The cubs responded with pure happiness, nuzzling against their parents and making the soft sounds that meant love and safety. Lisa watched the scene with her own tears blurring her vision. These weren't enemy soldiers anymore. They were parents who had found their lost children. Parents who had probably given up hope of ever seeing these little ones alive again. The leader looked up at Lisa, still holding Scout and Patches. When he spoke, it was in heavily accented but clear English. "You saved them," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved our children. Why? We are enemies in this war." Lisa's armor finally gave up. The power cells died with a soft sigh, and suddenly she could feel the full bite of the frozen air. Her legs shook with exhaustion and hunger, but she managed to stay standing. "Because they're babies," she said simply. "It doesn't matter what species they are or what war their parents are fighting. They're just babies who needed help." The leader studied her face through her helmet's faceplate. Lisa could see him trying to understand how a human could risk everything for alien children. In his 4 eyes, she saw the exact moment when understanding dawned. "You have children of your own?" he asked. "I had a brother," Lisa said. "He died when he was young. I couldn't save him, but I could save them." The leader nodded slowly. He said something to his soldiers in Zephyrian, and they immediately began setting up emergency equipment. Within minutes, they had a heat generator running and were offering Lisa food and warm drink from their supplies. "I am Kethvar," the leader said as he helped Lisa sit down near the heater. "These cubs are the children of our colony's leaders. When the fighting came close, we had to evacuate quickly. The adults could make the journey, but the young ones were too small and weak. We thought we had lost them forever." Scout climbed into Lisa's lap, purring like a tiny engine. Even though he was back with his people, he seemed reluctant to leave the human who had carried him to safety. Patches settled down next to Lisa's feet, and soon several other cubs had gathered around her. "They remember you," Kethvar said with amazement. "They know you saved them." Lisa stroked Scout's soft fur with trembling fingers. Her armor was dead weight now, but the cub's body heat was helping to keep her warm. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Kethvar said firmly. "Not anyone would risk their life for enemy children. This is something special. Something that changes everything." As if to prove his point, Kethvar activated a communication device and began speaking rapidly in Zephyrian. Lisa couldn't understand most of it, but she caught enough words to know he was calling his commanders. He was telling them about the human soldier who had saved their young. The storm that had been building all day finally arrived. bringing wind and snow that would have killed Lisa if she had been alone. But now she was surrounded by Zephyrian soldiers who treated her like an honored guest. They shared their food and gave her warm clothes to wear under her dead armor. As night fell over the pickup zone, Lisa found herself sitting by the heater with 12 alien cubs climbing all over her. Scout had claimed a spot on her shoulders. Patches was curled up in her lap and the others were scattered around her like a living blanket. Kethvar sat across from her, watching his children with wonder. "This changes everything," he said again. "When word of this spreads, when both our peoples hear what you did, it will change how we see each other." Lisa looked down at the cubs, who were starting to fall asleep despite all the excitement. "I hope so," she said. "Maybe their children won't have to grow up in a war." Outside the shelter, the storm raged across the frozen planet. But inside, surrounded by former enemies who had become friends, Lisa felt warmer than she had since arriving on this world. Scout made a small, contented sound and pressed closer to her neck. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and difficult decisions. But tonight, 12 young lives were safe and warm, and that was enough to change the universe. 3 days later, Lisa stood in a place she never thought she would see. The main hall of the Zephyrian colony ship was beautiful beyond imagination, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal and a ceiling that showed the stars outside. But what amazed her most was seeing the cubs reunited with their extended families. Scout raced around the hall with his siblings, healthy and happy and full of energy. They had grown noticeably in just a few days, their fur thicker and their movements more confident. But every few minutes, Scout would run back to Lisa and chirp at her, as if making sure she was still there. Patches had become the most social of the cubs. She seemed to enjoy meeting all the adult Zephyrians who came to see the miracle children. But she always stayed close to Lisa, often sitting at her feet during the long meetings and ceremonies. The story of the human soldier who saved alien babies had spread through both military forces like wildfire. Within hours of Kethvar's initial report, communication channels that had been silent for months suddenly came alive with messages. Generals and admirals on both sides demanded details. Politicians called for emergency sessions. News reporters broadcast the story across human space. Lisa found herself at the center of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. What had started as a simple act of compassion was becoming the foundation for peace talks between two species that had been trying to destroy each other. "The timing is perfect," said Admiral Rachel Torres, the human negotiator who had arrived that morning. She was a stern woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but she smiled when she watched Lisa playing with the cubs. "Both sides have been looking for a way to end this war without losing face. Your actions give us the excuse we need." Lisa wasn't sure she liked being called an excuse, but she understood what the Admiral meant. The war had been going badly for everyone involved. Both humans and Zephyrians had lost too many soldiers and spent too much money. But pride and politics had prevented either side from suggesting peace. Now they had a story that made peace look like strength instead of weakness. The human who risked everything for enemy children. The Zephyrian soldiers who protected that human in return. It was the kind of story that gave people hope. The formal negotiations took place in a neutral space station orbiting the planet. Lisa attended as a witness, wearing a new suit of armor to replace the one that had died keeping the cubs alive. Scout rode on her shoulder during the meetings, having somehow convinced the diplomats that he was an essential part of the process. The talks lasted for 2 weeks. Lisa watched as men and women who had been sending soldiers to die worked out the details of peace. Territory boundaries, prisoner exchanges, trade agreements, reparations, all the complicated business of ending a war. But the heart of the agreement was simpler. Both species recognized that they had more in common than they had differences. Both valued family and children. Both wanted a future where their young could grow up safely. Both had learned that courage and compassion could bridge any gap. The cubs played their part too. Whenever the negotiations got heated, Scout would chirp loudly from Lisa's shoulder, reminding everyone why they were there. The other cubs, who attended some sessions with their parents, seemed to enjoy the attention from human diplomats. Patches developed a particular fondness for Admiral Torres, often falling asleep in the older woman's lap during long meetings. On the day the peace treaty was signed, Lisa stood with Kethvar and the other Zephyrian parents as human and alien leaders put their names on the historic document. Scout sat on her shoulder, wearing a tiny ceremonial sash that someone had made for him. The hall was full of reporters and cameras and important people, but Lisa only had eyes for the cubs. They were getting bigger every day. Soon they would be too large to ride on her shoulder or curl up in her lap. They would grow into adults and have cubs of their own. But they would remember this time, when a human stranger became their mother for 3 desperate days. After the ceremony, Kethvar approached Lisa with a serious expression. "We have discussed this among the council," he said. "The cubs see you as family now. In our culture, this creates bonds that cannot be broken. You will always be welcome among our people." Lisa looked down at Scout, who was playing with the fringe on her ceremonial sash. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means you have a home with us if you ever want it," Kethvar said. "And it means the cubs will have a way to contact you as they grow up. If you agree to it." Lisa felt tears starting in her eyes. She had been dreading the moment when she would have to say goodbye to the cubs forever. The idea that she could watch them grow up, that they could remain part of her life, was more than she had dared to hope for. "I would like that very much," she said. The next few months passed quickly. Lisa returned to Earth as a hero, but she found that fame sat uncomfortably on her shoulders. She gave speeches about peace and cooperation, appeared on news programs, and met with politicians who wanted to be associated with her story. But what she really wanted was to return to the simple life she had known before the war. She was granted medical discharge from the military with full honors. The farm in Ohio where she had grown up was still there, and her family welcomed her home with open arms. Lisa spent her days working in the fields and her evenings, video calling the cubs on the new communication system that had been set up between human and Zephyrian space. Scout was always the first to appear on screen, chirping excitedly and showing off new tricks he had learned. Patches would demonstrate her growing ability to speak human words, though her pronunciation was still adorably awkward. The other cubs would crowd around the camera, each trying to tell Lisa about their day in their musical language. A year after the rescue, Lisa received an invitation that made her heart race with excitement. The Zephyrian colony was establishing a permanent settlement on a planet in neutral space, and they wanted her to attend the founding ceremony. More importantly, they wanted her to help establish the first interspecies school, where human and Zephyrian children could learn together. Lisa packed her bags without hesitation. The transport ship that carried her to the new world was filled with human families who had volunteered to be part of the experiment. Teachers, doctors, engineers, farmers, all willing to build something new with their former enemies. The planet they had chosen was beautiful, with purple skies and silver trees that chimed like bells in the wind. The settlement was built around a central plaza, where human and Zephyrian architecture blended together in harmonious curves and angles. Lisa's reunion with the cubs was everything she had hoped for. They were adolescents now, tall and graceful, but still recognizably the babies she had carried in her armor. Scout had grown into a confident young leader, but he still chirped with delight when he saw her. Patches had become an artist, creating beautiful sculptures that combined human and Zephyrian techniques. The school was a success from the beginning. Human and Zephyrian children played together in the purple grass playgrounds, learning each other's languages and sharing each other's games. The cubs became unofficial ambassadors, helping nervous human children feel comfortable and showing them that differences could be wonderful instead of frightening. Lisa found her calling as a teacher. She specialized in helping young children from both species understand each other's cultures. Her classroom was always full of laughter and questions and the sound of children being children, regardless of how many legs they had or what color their skin was. On quiet evenings, Lisa would sit in her garden behind the school and watch the 2 suns set over the alien landscape. Scout would often join her, now too big to sit on her shoulder but still small enough to curl up beside her chair. Patches would bring her latest artwork to show, and sometimes other cubs would gather around to hear stories about Earth. "Do you ever regret it?" Scout asked one evening. He was fluent in English now, though he still spoke with the musical accent of his people. "Giving up your old life to save us?" Lisa looked at the thriving settlement around them, at the human and Zephyrian children playing together in the fading light, at the young adult who had once been a dying baby in the snow. "Never," she said. "Not for a single moment." Scout curled closer to her, purring softly. "We remember, you know. All of us remember being warm and safe in your armor. We remember your voice telling us stories. You were our first mother." Lisa reached down to scratch behind his ears, marveling at how far they had all come. The war was over, the peace was holding, and a new generation was growing up without the fear and hatred that had divided their parents. In the distance, children laughed as they chased each other through the silver trees, human children and Zephyrian children, playing together as naturally as if they had been born on the same world. The sound carried on the evening breeze, full of hope and joy and the promise of a better future. Lisa smiled and leaned back in her chair, watching the stars appear in the purple sky. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, where she had been born. Somewhere else was the frozen planet where she had made the choice that changed everything. But here on this new world, surrounded by the children she had saved and the peace they had helped create, Lisa was exactly where she belonged. The cubs were safe. The war was over, and the universe was a little bit